And it's 11 o'clock. Good morning to you. It's Sunday morning, the 11th of November 2018. Remembrance Sunday it is today. Gloomy old day in South Manchester. Love giving you the old weather report. So I do. Hope you're well. Hope you've had a good weekend and you're in good form this Sunday morning. I'm going to look through the Sunday newspapers as I always do between now and midday, and we'll also hear from some of the mid-morning Politico talk shows, BBC and Sky as well. As usual, if there's something you'd like to contribute, I'd be delighted to hear from you. You need only tweet the programme. My Twitter handle is at Richie Allen Show. Couldn't be simpler, at Richie Allen Show on Twitter. A warm welcome to Sunday View to you.
Asking the questions mainstream journalists will never ask. This is your Richie Allen Show on richieallen.co.uk, Fab Radio 2 in Manchester, and triggerwarning.tv.
Yeah, I've been asked about the email. I do get some emails, some I don't get. It's a bit temperamental. The best thing to do is to tweet the programme at Richie Allen Show. Lots to talk about today as usual. Some Brexit, but not an awful lot. Plenty of human interest too.
It's the Richie Allen Show, broadcasting live on richieallen.co.uk and multiple platforms around the world. And now, here's your host, Richie Allen.
Yeah, a little bit of Brexit. It is important because it's coming to a head, of course, right about now. We'll do a bit of Brexit. Lots as well. We're going to talk about microchipping in the programme this morning. I know you'll have a lot to say about that. We'll be talking about faith schools as well. We'll talk about Russia bashing. We'll talk about news, irrefutable evidence, we knew anyway, but irrefutable evidence that aid money for Syria coming from the United States and elsewhere is getting into the hands of jihadists. Yeah, we'll talk about that as well. That's Sunday View, of course. Welcome to it. I'm having a good weekend. Big day in the city today for soccer fans or football fans. Derby Day. The Blues of Manchester City play the mighty Reds, Manchester United, later on this afternoon. I'll be tuning in, and that's the last you'll hear of sport on this programme today. Remembrance Sunday, I'm going to talk a little bit about that in about 15 or 20 minutes as well. You might be interested in what I have to say about it. You might not. If you have ever served in the armed forces, or if somebody belonging to you, as we say in Ireland, if a relative or a loved one has ever served in the armed forces, you might want to hear what I have to say about Remembrance Sunday. You might be a bit triggered by it, but I think it's worth considering anyway. All right, let's just crack on straight into it then with the Sunday Times. In fact, I'm going to give you two headlines for the price of one here. Sunday Times and the Sunday Observer headline. The Sunday Times headline is May's Brexit deal crashes as EU turns off life support. The Sunday Observer headline is Top Tory says May handing power to EU in Brexit deal. A lot of this in the Sunday papers today, particularly on the front pages. So what is the Sunday Times saying then? Remember, last week the Sunday Times said it had evidence that a deal had been agreed between the EU and the UK. Remember, insider information, there was a deal. Well, it's gone 180 degrees, the Sunday Times has today. Because now the Sunday Times is saying that Theresa May has been plunged into a deeper crisis after Brussels rejected her key Brexit proposal, which was intended to avoid the UK being trapped in an indefinite customs union. You see, Theresa May has said to the European Union, to avoid any problems on the Northern Ireland border with Ireland, let's keep the whole of the United Kingdom in a customs union for the foreseeable future. Of course, the European Union loves that. But some of May's closest aides and roaring Brexiteers, staunch Brexiteers, have said this will have to be a very temporary arrangement. There will have to be a timeline and a date where the UK could then extricate itself from that temporary customs union. But the EU, of course, doesn't want the UK to ever leave the customs union. So it's all going, we'll say it tits up it's going for Theresa May. So that's in the Sunday Times today, which says senior EU officials sent shockwaves through Number 10 by rejecting this plan, sparking fears that negotiations have broken down days before no-deal preparations costing billions would need to be implemented. Kevin Schofield. Don't forget, by the way, since I spoke to you last, when did we speak last, you and I? Thursday, wasn't it? Since then, Boris Johnson's brother, Joe Johnson, resigned his ministerial post, saying that it's a big mess. It's basically vassalage to the European Union and we need a second referendum. Now, Joe Johnson wants to stay in the European Union, but he's asking for a second referendum. He's resigned. Justine Greening has been demanding a second referendum as well. She's obviously a Tory MP. Listen to Kevin Schofield. Kevin is the editor of Politics Home on Sky this morning, and to be fair to him, he does a good job of summing up what this might mean. So
the Sunday Times rather got us all excited last week by saying that a deal had been done. Well, a bit of a reverse ferret this week, as we say it in the newspaper business. The deal isn't done, and it now seems as if it's about to completely collapse. Without wanting to get bogged down in the whole detail, it basically comes down to how you keep the Northern Ireland border open. And Britain thought that they'd hit upon a compromise whereby the whole of the UK would stay in a customs union after Brexit for a temporary period. But there is no agreement between Britain and Brussels as to how long that temporary period should be.
Good stuff, that. That's the key thing there. How long would this temporary arrangement be for? How long would it be for? Right? Dominic Raab, the Brexit secretary, said that basically the UK should have a button almost where they could press it and immediately leave at a time of its choosing. The European Union says no. European Union loves this idea of the UK staying in the customs union to prevent any hard border in Northern Ireland, which isn't a problem, by the way. It's just a nonsense. So what else does Kevin Schofield have to say?
It should be Britain have put forward a compromise, and it looks as though Brussels have turned around and said that's not going to fly.
So what's going to happen? Because no one's happy, are there?
No.
I'm not happy.
You're a man who's immersed in this. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I've always thought that a deal between the government and Brussels would get done. It probably wouldn't be a terribly satisfactory deal, but it would be a deal. And then Theresa May would bring it to Parliament, and that's when it would get particularly dangerous for her, because the chances are she won't be able to get it through Parliament.
There's no chances are. Of course she will not be able to get it through Parliament. It was never going to happen. I said this 2 years ago. This would ultimately bring the government down, or there would be a second referendum. And it's looking like it's going to bring the government down. Even if the European Union agreed to this, and apparently the European Union is sticking its fingers up at May and saying no, because it wants to humiliate the United Kingdom on the global stage, lest any other country have any ideas of leaving the fascist federalist superstate. Absolute abject humiliation for the UK is what it wants. The European Union would now prefer that the government was brought down by the DUP, which is propping it up, by the way, in order to force another election, and then you get a Labour Lib Dem coalition in, and they will basically keep the UK in the European Union one way or another. That's what's going on here.
Now, obviously, we had Joe Johnson's resignation, which surprised everyone on Friday afternoon. He would have been seen as someone by the government who would have been a loyalist, a Remainer, who would probably have thought this deal just about cuts it, so I'll vote for it. Well, he's now said he won't vote for it, and others, I think, will follow suit on the Remain wing of the Tory party. So you've got the Brexiteers who don't like it, you've got Remainers who don't like it, Labour say they won't support it, SNP and the Lib Dems won't support it, the DUP even are now saying they won't support it. So
yes, the DUP are saying they won't support it, and the DUP can bring this government down anytime it chooses, just by withdrawing its support, its confidence and supply arrangement, because Theresa May, while the Conservatives won the most seats in the last general election, it didn't have enough to form a government. It was able to form a government with the support of a handful of Democratic Unionist Party MPs who could, in 25 minutes from now, or tomorrow or next week, say, you can go and fuck off. The government is over. We're pulling out over this Northern Ireland thing. again, which I think would be favoured by the European Union. Kate McCann reports for Sky News, not that Kate McCann, and was asked, she's a reporter, she's at Westminster, and was asked basically, what does this mean for Theresa May? Well, we'll have a listen to this, even though we know.
Well, that's right. Theresa May faces an incredibly difficult week this week, and that's because she's got a lot to do on Brexit and not very much time to do it. She's still got to agree a deal with Brussels. Now, that's something that Number 10 hoped they would have been able to do this weekend, and that hasn't happened. When she has that deal, she needs to take it to her cabinet, who need to agree to it. And after that, she needs to go to the House of Commons to win the support of MPs, because without their backing, she won't be able to proceed to legislation which will allow the UK to leave the EU by March 2019. And the last of those looks set to be the trickiest, because, as you say, MPs from all sides of every different party and all sides of this argument, Remain and Leave, are uniting to say that they don't agree with the plan that she hasn't yet even been able to agree with Brussels. Now, today, writing in the Sunday Telegraph, Sammy Wilson, who's a DUP MP, and remember, the Prime Minister relies on the DUP to get...
Listen up now. She's talking about Sammy Wilson, DUP MP. The government can't exist without the DUP. Sammy Wilson, writing in the Telegraph today,
DUP to get her votes through the Commons, has joined forces with Steve Baker, a Conservative Brexiteer, and that's unusual in itself. But the two of them have warned that they would vote down her deal if Theresa May doesn't do enough to satisfy their concerns about the Northern Irish border issue. And they write, "We share the Prime Minister's ambition for an EU free trade agreement, but not at any price, and certainly not at the price of our union. If the government makes the historic mistake of prioritising placating the EU over establishing an independent and whole UK, then regrettably we must vote against the deal." Now, that would be incredibly difficult for the Prime Minister, because without the DUP's votes and without some of her own MPs, it looks almost impossible for her to get this deal through the House of Commons.
well, she won't get it through. No matter what, it ain't going through. What then? What happens then?
Well, then we could be looking at a no-deal scenario, and Cabinet Brexiteers are so worried about this that they've come up with a plan themselves to do something about it if we end up in a no-deal situation, to soften the blow. That would involve staying quite closely tied to the EU until 2021 and paying £18 billion. Now, interestingly, Jacob Rees-Mogg, who's sort of head of this Brexiteer group of Tories in the Commons, has also come out and backed this plan today. So the feeling of concern about no deal really is out there. So Theresa May needs to get a deal. She then needs to get it past her own MPs. And if she can't do that, and we end up in a situation where there is no withdrawal agreement, well, it's anybody's guess what happens next.
Of course, there should be no fear of no deal. From the get-go, the country should have left, but May is not a Remainer. May is an arch-Zionist. Excuse me, May is not a Brexiteer. She's an arch-Zionist. She's a criminal. Just Google Theresa May, Philip May, HSBC. Theresa May doesn't want the UK to leave the European Union, so she doesn't care, really. She might look vexed and she might look harried in television appearances and in interviews, but she's an actress, dear. She's an actress. She's a puppet. Doesn't matter. May's future is assured. That's what's happening. Of course, they should walk out tomorrow. It is a fascist, federalist, superstate. It is a tyrannical institution. It is filthy to its core. How many times do we have to say it hasn't been able to sign off on its own accounts for 30 years? Such is the level of robbing and pillaging and raping of monies accrued, gathered by the subjugation and humiliation of countries in Europe, particularly in southern Europe. It is a pyramid scheme, the EU, and that's the very least of its crimes. So of course you should walk away in the morning. Well, we'll put tariffs on. No, you fucking won't, is what you'll do. You will not, because we will destroy Peugeot, Mercedes, right? Volkswagen. Do we have to continue? The wineries of Spain, the wineries of France. So no, you won't be putting any tariffs on anything. You'll piss off and you'll like it, is what you'll do. That's what should have happened. But it ain't going to happen. A little bit more of Brexit, not much more, and then we're going to get into more human interest type things, dear listener. All right. What's that? You're really loving the Brexit stuff? Thank you very much. Really appreciate your support there. It's all over the papers. Look, the Sunday Telegraph. MPs will block May's Brexit plan. Right. Same again. All over the place. Now, the Education Secretary, Damien Hines, was on the Marr show this morning, and Andrew Marr asked him about Joe Johnson's resignation letter, or he tried to in any case. Andrew Marr and Education Secretary Damien Hines speaking about the Joe Johnson resignation.
Well, let me put to you directly what Joe Johnson said in his resignation letter. He said, to present the nation with a choice between two deeply unattractive outcomes, vassalage and chaos, is a failure of British statecraft on a scale unseen since the Suez Crisis.
Well, look, Joe puts his points in that particular way. Actually, what I see is something different. We had a referendum, we had a clear result. It was a very participatory campaign, it was a high turnout, a clear question and a clear result. We now have to deliver on that, and we have to come up with the best deal that works for people's jobs, works for people's families. Sure. It's not necessarily going to be something that everybody's going to think is absolutely perfectly what they want. But that's the nature of these things. There are some trade-offs.
You've lost 7 cabinet and ministerial colleagues over this. There's a sense the whole thing is fracturing and crumbling just at the moment. Why do you think that might be?
Well, look, it is a very complex thing, and it's not the first time that Europe has been something which has caused very, very intense debate in British politics, and people have very strong views. But what the Prime Minister is doing is charting a course to make sure that we have an arrangement, a future arrangement with the EU, which works for our economy, delivers on the referendum, and keeps the integrity of the United Kingdom.
Let's look at where we are. There was, as I said earlier on, there was a sense that this week just passed, there was going to be a special cabinet meeting and it was going to be presented to cabinet. That didn't happen. Are you clearing your diaries? Are you ready to clear your diaries for another meeting next week when you'll get?
Well, of course we have to be ready whenever the time is. But the negotiations have to finish, and it's got to be a good deal. It can't be just a deal has to be finished at any cost. We have to have the maximum possible leeway, lots and lots of different aspects to consider, to trade off. And as I say, when that comes back, of course, people will look at it very, very closely. They need to think about what the alternatives are as well. It's no good just not liking individual aspects. You've got to have in mind, if you're going to take that view, you've got to have in mind a realistic, viable, deliverable alternative. I think people are going to be getting behind this deal and saying, yeah, let's get on with it. It's right for our economy. Let's move forward.
What a delusional madman. Nobody's going to get behind it. Did he not listen to Marr? Has he not listened to the Remainers and the Brexiteers in his own party? Nobody's going to support it. Even if the European Union agreed to it, nobody is going to support it. Right? Right. Oh, and on this backstop, this is the last bit of Brexit now. On this backstop thing, right? To be fair, Marr does his job for once here. He asks Damien Hines, the Education Secretary, about the betrayal of this backstop arrangement being open-ended with no finish date, because that's a betrayal of the people who voted to leave the European Union. If you keep the whole country in a customs union because of some fictional border issues in the north of Ireland, it is a betrayal of Brexit. So Marr does his job and asks him. By the way, just in case I have to remind you again, and I do understand that this is somewhat complicated for some people, there's a lot of talk about there being a problem with a hard border on in Northern Ireland. You see, Northern Ireland is part of the United Kingdom. Now, Ireland, my country, is in the European Union. So when the UK leaves, in theory, the European Union border with the United Kingdom would be between the north of Ireland and the Republic, right? And Remainers and the European Union themselves have created this fantasy, fictional problem where this could affect the Good Friday Agreement and this could affect relationships between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. This could be problematic. It's bullshit. Of course it's not going to restart the terrible problems, the terrorism problems, the troubles, as it was called, in the north. It's not going to happen. It's nonsense, and it's very easy to facilitate, the transfer of goods from the north of Ireland into Ireland very, very simply, without any hoo-ha, without any problem whatsoever. It's a fictional problem, invented out of thin air, again to delay the process of the UK leaving the European Union. So May said, right then, for the foreseeable future, for a temporary period, as we leave, we'll keep the whole country in the customs union to avoid this hard border nonsense. The European Union is saying no, because it wants, it doesn't just want its cake, it wants to eat it and then some. And as I said, punish, humiliate the UK as a warning to any other country who tries to leave. Right. Anyway, so Andrew Marr asks about this backstop issue. He asks Damien Hines, the Education Secretary. Have a listen.
In this backstop, which might very well happen, we would be subject to EU rules and regulations without any kind of vote. And you say it couldn't be permanent, but it could go on for 10 or 20 years unless there is a way out. And my question to you is, what should the way out be? There is not going to be a date, we gather, by which time it ends. So what is the way out?
So look, we have to come up with something. The Prime Minister has to negotiate something which is negotiable with the other side, as well as working for people here. So
it's not simply a British ejector seat.
So if you have too hard a line about saying, well, we must just have a totally unilateral exit, or there's an absolutely fixed hard end date, that is not very, very unlikely that is going to be negotiable with the other side. On the other hand, people here rightly want comfort, and they should be able to have comfort and confidence that it isn't an open-ended thing. So there needs to be some sort of way
and this is the crunch problem at the moment.
Of giving that comfort and confidence to people. But exactly what the shape of that is part of the, that is at the heart of these discussions, these negotiations that are going on with the European Union. We have to see what comes back.
Yeah, masters of saying lots but saying sod all at the back of it all. Politicians there. What's the therapy song? Therapy. Weren't in Therapy, the rock band, rock stroke punk, weren't they from Northern Ireland? Weren't they from the north? Weren't they Therapy? Going Nowhere was the song, wasn't it? Going nowhere. We're not going anywhere. I did say to Neil Sanders when speaking with him on Thursday, because I was very interested and have been very interested in Neil's work into Cambridge Analytica and Steve Bannon and the rise of the right around Europe and in the US and in the UK. I did, because I'm open-minded, I'm not dogmatic. I did wonder, amongst the elite themselves, amongst those who really run things, could there be disagreement over things like the European Union? The European Union is a major step to global dominance by a tiny, tiny, tiny band of people, financiers. That's what it is. And I wonder, amongst the financiers themselves, are there those who think that the European Union is, while it was a major part of the plan for that global dominance, maybe it's not going as quickly as they wanted it to go. And that's why, you seemingly have some on the right, some who you would expect to be all for the European Union, but are not, and are saying that it's a good thing if the UK leaves. It's all very complicated. Opinions, it's all opinions ultimately when it comes down to it. I'm going to read a few tweets now, and then we're going to leave the European Union alone. We've got lots of interesting things to talk about between now and noon. It's 23 minutes past 11 as I speak with you. Of course, it won't be if you're listening to this on demand later on. Hi to Natasha even, in Liverpool. How you doing, Natasha? Hi to David Stanford. Hi to Althea. Nice to hear from you. Hi to Gail as well. To Liz Jones. How you doing, Liz? To Feathers R Us. Good morning, mate. To Susan, who's listening in. To Joseph as well. To Lance. Gillian as well. Gillian Sharp. How you doing? Ruth Young. How you doing, Ruth? And Samantha, thanks for listening to the programme this morning. Always good to hear from you. To follow what other people are saying to me, just go to twitter.com and put Richie Allen Show in all one word. Press enter and you'll see what other people are telling me. Alrighty. Okay. We're going to have some music. Yeah. Don't often do that on a Sunday, but we're going to introduce a couple of laid-back tunes. On a Sunday morning, it is the 11th of November 2018, Remembrance Sunday. When we come back, I'm going to be talking about Remembrance Sunday. So keep your ears pricked up. Might trigger you some of what I say in a couple of minutes. This is Wet, Wet, Wet. Tune. Wet, 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 Sweet Surrender on the Richie Allen Show. 28 minutes past the hour, Sunday View. Going to look at Remembrance Sunday now. Remembrance Sunday, let's talk about that. Yeah, because there's a couple of newspapers we haven't gotten to yet, the front pages, I should say. Let's have a look at the front page of the Sunday Express. We must never forget. says the Daily Express. Focusing on the inevitable, the Great War commemorations taking place across the country today and across France as well and elsewhere. The paper prints the words that Lieutenant Colonel William Murray wrote 100 years ago as the guns fell silent. No more danger, no more wars, and no more mud and misery. What bollocks, of course. What monumental bollocks. The Mail on Sunday carries on with the theme. The Mail on Sunday headline is writ very large. Remember! That's it. Remember! Yes, remember all the lies you were told in school about the First World War, the ridiculously monikered Great War. Yeah, all the lies you were told about why that event in history came to pass. Remember the lies they told you? They said it was about the coming together of certain alliances in Europe. Do you remember? Defensive alliances. They told you there was tension amongst imperialist nations over Africa and Asia. Basically that the imperialist, colonialist, I can't even say it, countries were squabbling over the loot or the looting of the Third World. They talked about the arms race, of course. When you went to school, you would have heard that. The building of German submarines, the German Navy, the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, and all of that old bollocks. That's what they'll be teaching your children about the First World War. But it is patently nonsense. 'Tis a lie. Okay? You will never hear in any school in this country, in Ireland, in the United States, or anywhere, about Paul Warburg, about Jacob Schiff, and about the Rothschild banking dynasty. You'll never hear of any of that. You'll never hear that Warburg and Jacob Schiff represented Rothschild's interests in the United States. You'll never hear about how they bankrolled US President Woodrow Wilson. They financed his entire campaign. You'll never hear that once they had gotten this guy into the White House, that they then blackmailed him into setting up the Federal Reserve. You'll never hear that in any history class either. You'll never hear any of that. Blackmailed, Richie? Who blackmailed Woodrow Wilson? He was blackmailed by Jacob Schiff, who knew that Wilson had an affair at Princeton University where he worked as a professor with a fellow professor's wife. Blackmailed him and enabled him to pay hush money to keep that quiet. This is all true. They got him to set up the Anti-Defamation League. Yes, Wilson set the Anti-Defamation League up at the behest of Rothschild's men in DC, Warburg and Schiff. Why? Well, basically they wanted to label any questioning or criticism of the Rothschild global control, they wanted it labelled as anti-Semitic. It's all true, this. All true. So Wilson capitulated and handed the United States effectively to Rothschild and co. Now, if you want to know more about this, I recommend Dean Henderson, who was on the programme on Thursday. He's written about this extensively throughout his career. He's a genius, Dean, and he has created the perfect record of this through his books. Which European country in the early part of the 20th century had no Rothschild-controlled central bank? I'll give you a guess. Begins with a G and ends in a Y. Germany. I'll say it again. Germany. So what the Rothschilds did was used the British Empire and its control of the United States to basically destroy Germany. All the while this was going on, don't forget as well, the Palestinian question, the Balfour Declaration, all of this is all relevant and is never discussed or is never taught or is never investigated by academics or by your high school history teacher. It isn't. This is what they're not telling you today. Remember these people. They died for our future. No, they didn't. You could make that argument about the men and women who made sacrifices during the period 1939 to 1945. You can make that argument. But what you had in the First World War was you had a Rothschild-funded war to bring about as much control of the world's economy as that company possibly could. And you had the deaths of more than 20 million people. It was a blood sacrifice. I think Jordan Maxwell has done stuff on this programme where he's called it a blood sacrifice to the gods. The Anti-Defamation League was set up to prevent discussion of this, although this isn't a Jewish conspiracy. Again, we've said this on this programme a million times. Jews are as much victims of this, and of course were, in the period of the Second World War as anybody else. It's a Zionist conspiracy, but it's not even a Zionist conspiracy, because these people, you can't label them. They don't fit any label. The banking cartels, Schiff, Warburg, Rockefeller, Rothschild, Oppenheimer, we've talked about them so many times on this programme, who have hid their plans for global control and control of global finance and everything in the world, hid behind the facade of Jewishness when they're not Jews. They've got nothing to do with Jews and they have nothing in common with Jews. It's incredible. This is what happened. There was a director of the Bank of England called Vincent Vickers who once gave a quotation or an interview for a book that was, I think the book was called Newth, the Empire of the City. I think it was published in 1943. And Vincent Vickers, a director of the Bank of England, for about 10 years in the early 20th century, said, and I quote, that the Rothschilds, the City of London Rothschilds, are to blame for the wars of the world. And in the Second World War, the Nazis were funded by IG Farben, by Bath, by Hoist, by the cartel of petrochemical companies. That's who funded and financed the Nazis. Who gave them the money? Who gave these massive petrochemical companies the money to fund, finance and materially support the Nazis? Who gave them the money? Rothschild. It's got nothing to do with Jews. It ain't a Jewish conspiracy, it's a bloodline conspiracy. Because I've told you before on this programme, and it isn't my research and my work, I've used the research and the work of others like Dean Henderson, like David Icke and others, how the royal families and the financial elites married into one another, how they created the illusion of democracy. Yes, we'll introduce parliament and we'll introduce elections and we'll pretend to be figureheads, but in fact, we're still really calling the shots. The Crown and Rothschild and Warburg and Schiff and Oppenheimer and their ancestors, between them, own over 80% of the world's land and resources. That's the truth. That's the undisputed truth of what happened in the run-up to the First World War, the so-called Great War. It had nothing to do with defensive alliances, nothing to do with naval races. These were just symptoms. These were just chapters of a story, a carefully crafted story. What it was really about was aiding the ongoing takeover of everything of any worth or any value in the world by a handful of families, controlled ultimately by Rothschild. This is true. All of it is true. Tweets to @Richie Allen Show, 23 minutes to the top of the hour. It's undisputed that. Now, Aaron Bastani co-founded Novara Media, and he's a big Jeremy Corbyn supporter. And on this remembrance nonsense, he said the poppy and remembrance was all basically nonsense. He called it racist and imperialist. Anyway, Labour's Shadow Defence Secretary Nia Griffith was asked about his comments by Sky News' Sophie Ridge. Let me repeat that. The Labour Party has a Shadow Defence Secretary who would become the Defence Secretary were Labour to win the next election. Her name is Nia Griffith. She was asked about Labour supporter and co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani, who said that Remembrance Day was racist and imperialist.
I want to talk to you about some comments that were made earlier this week by a very prominent Labour Party supporter about the poppy. Aaron Bastani, who is one of your most high-profile activists, shall we say, someone who's very active on social media, said this: I think the poppy appeal is grotesque. It has a kind of triumphalist militarism about it. It's racist, right? It's white supremacist. I mean, you're wearing a poppy.
Well, this is absolute nonsense. And first of all, I must say, this person no way represents the Labour Party. And I can assure you that up and down the country, Labour politicians will be proudly wearing their poppy today. They will be at the cenotaph this morning. And they recognise the huge sacrifice that has been made by our armed forces, both in the First World War and in conflict since. And they recognise that this is a time we come together and we remember, and that there has been so much good work done by the Royal British Legion that I find the comments that this single person made completely unrepresentative and, quite frankly, an utter disgrace.
I mean, you say that's not representative, but he is somebody who is a very prominent cheerleader for Jeremy Corbyn. He has a very large social media following. I mean, should he be thrown out of the party?
Well, he's one individual.
Who the hell is Sophie Ridge, a presenter, to ask Nia Griffith, should this guy be thrown out of the party because he said that Remembrance Sunday is a monumental load of bollocks, which it is. Because we don't remember anything. We don't remember these people. Look what happens in 2018 when the men and women of the UK armed forces come back from overseas, where they're exposed to unimaginable horrors. And it ain't their fault, by the way. You know, this isn't support the troops or any of that old crap. These are men and women, usually from the poorest families in the country. Broken down, humiliated, made into a complete nothing, and then built back up to be able to go overseas to do the horrible things they're asked to do against people who never threatened the United Kingdom. And what's the reward for that? They come home and many of them end up on the streets of this country, or they end up committing suicide. So this remembrance thing, I don't know if this Aaron Bastani guy really understands any of this, but he's right, it is a load of bollocks. And Sophie Ridge is asking, should he be thrown out for expressing an opinion? Get him out of the party. What does she say, Nia Griffith?
He's one individual. He's one individual who's put his views up on social media, and I can assure you that he really does not represent mainstream feeling within the party. Personally, I think the remarks are absolutely abhorrent.
Should he be thrown out?
Well, I would like him to...
She just won't leave a go, will she, Sophie Ridge? Should he be thrown out for making some remarks? What? Who's he offending? People that are dead? People blown to fucking pieces in trenches, while officers had breakfast and drank whiskey and told them to run over to the top to their for their certain death, remembering the madness of it. Let's throw him out. You can't question the establishment narrative on wars.
To retract on those comments, I certainly would. Whether he's to be thrown out is a matter for the party to consider.
Oh, Jesus. Whether he's to be thrown out is a matter of the party to consider. For an opinion. Nobody gives a shit about the soldiers. Nobody does, really. They dehumanise them, drug them, send them off to the Middle East to burn and to slaughter. It's not their fault. I said it already. And I'm not trying to curry favour with anybody. It isn't their fault. They don't sign up for that. They come back destroyed and then they're left on the streets. So you can stick Remembrance Sunday and the poppy up your fucking arse. Because it's got nothing to do with remembering the brave men and women of our armed forces. These men were fucking shot. If they turned around and said to the mustachioed dickhead, officer, sir, do you really want me to run up over this trench to my certain fucking death? Really? For what? They were shot. They were shot for cowardice. For the Rothschild, Warburg, Schiff, Oppenheimer dynasty, not to protect the United Kingdom from anybody or from any enemy. Millions of them. Remember them. No, remember the maniacs. Remember the maniacs who brought it to bear in the first place, is what I would say. So they're dragging out these military men today, mostly men. I haven't seen any women. And they're out in force with the ridiculous uniforms. And one of them is General Nick Carter. He's the chief of the Defence Forces. He was on with Andrew Marr today. And he couldn't miss the opportunity for a bit of Russia bashing. Marr asked him about his recent comments on the rise of Russia and how dangerous the Russian President Vladimir Putin is.
Well, I think what we see is in this great power competition that's underway at the moment is that the character of warfare has changed, and that gives states and those people who might wish to compete with us the chance to use a lot of different tactics and techniques. And we saw that in March with the attack on the Skripal family. We see it with fake news, with disinformation. We see it in cyber. And these new tools are, I think, great vulnerabilities for all of us.
But nobody really thinks that modern Russia, unlike the Soviet Union in the communist days, actually wants to invade the West and tanks rolling across the German plain and so forth. That age does seem to many people to have gone.
Yes, but I think the great danger is the sorts of tools and tactics that I've described are no longer regulated. And I think if you go back to when we were growing up in the Cold War, there were some very sensible diplomatic systems and mechanisms to manage arms control, but also to make sure we understood each other and that we had behaviours that we all understood. I think the risk these days is one of escalation inadvertently, which might lead to miscalculation. Because you're absolutely right, I don't think anybody's got any intention to go to war in the conventional sense of the term, but with miscalculation.
Fake news, assassinations, and then things run out of control.
And particularly with cyber, which is totally unregulated. And
Can it be regulated, do you think?
Well, I think we have to think about it. I mean, I think, you know, the noble institutions that we created for noble reasons in 1945 were not necessarily created to deal with some of these challenges.
So we need a new world order which...
What's that? What was that? Andrew Marr, what did you say there?
Deal with some of these challenges.
So we need a new world order which looks...
Oh, we need a new world order, says Andrew Marr. This is predictive programming. It's not a coincidence that Marr uses phrases like this. A new world order.
Looks at the cyber world, looks at fake news, looks at destabilisation using the internet.
Well, I think if we want to protect the multilateral system that has really secured our security, stability and prosperity, we need to make sure that it's fit for purpose in the modern world.
Yeah, what a bullshitter. Russia is the biggest threat to peace and prosperity, they say. Do you know what? The biggest threat to peace and prosperity are the Zionist-occupied governments of the UK, the US and France and their Saudi puppets. That's the biggest threat. How do I know this? Well, we know it instinctively, but the proof is everywhere. RT with a brilliant report this week saying that US aid audited themselves and found that some of its own humanitarian programs for Syria and Iraq might have inadvertently assisted terrorist groups. Well, you could have knocked me down with a feather, eh? US aid basically runs the foreign aid provided by the American government. That's what US aid does. Gets the money and distributes it. And it's basically acknowledged through its own auditing process that it has done a piss poor job of preventing money going to the head-chopping fucking maniacs, the Wahhabist lunatics. Are you laughing? Do I hear you laughing? Laugh, because it's not an accident. This isn't bad management or somebody crossing the T's and dotting the I's in the wrong places. 'Twas meant to get to these lunatics. This is how they supply the oxygen for the head choppers. I've said this 1,000 times. And they want you to believe that Russia is the greatest threat to stability and prosperity in the world, eh? As they are funding the most vile, Dante-like, nightmarish nutcases on planet Earth, giving them all they need to wreak havoc in the Middle East. Here's Murad Gazdiev from RT with an excellent report on this. Murad Gazdiev.
American taxpayer money, cash that is almost wholly in the US mindset, inviolable. Money that has seen politicians jailed for the slightest misuse is ending up in the hands of Al-Qaeda in Syria. Now, that's a sick twist, if anything.
It's more than a sick twist, right? Where's your tax dollars going? Are they going to build a community centre for the children to play in? No, they're actually going to ISIS, actually. Yeah. It's good. It's good. Well, we need those videos of ISIS chopping people's heads off. We need proper UHD. We need the best production values. So we better give money to those guys.
A new report has found that millions of dollars in aid to Syria has been funneled to terrorists.
Since late 2017, U.S. Agency for International Development Office of the Inspector General investigations have uncovered numerous instances of possible or confirmed diversions to armed groups in Idlib Governorate in northwestern Syria, including Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, a designated foreign terrorist organization.
Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, News for Front, they have many names. In short, Al-Qaeda's wing in Syria. A fact of the matter that they were benefiting from US taxpayer money is no surprise. Everyone, NGOs, aid organizations, civilians, traveling through Idlib, northern Syria, have to pay to pass checkpoints, be it in money, in goods. This has been a fact for years. It's business, one of the terrorists' main sources of funding. Worst of all, it is assumed that these jihadists have been able to infiltrate, put their people in NGOs, humanitarian organizations, from which they siphon money and aid to further their malign cause.
One investigation found that an NGO's employees knowingly diverted thousands of U.S. aid-funded food kits worth millions of dollars to ineligible beneficiaries, including Hayat Tahrir al-Sham fighters.
The report itself is light on names and numbers, perhaps for political reasons. The fallout here could seriously damage NGO operations. All we know is that millions of dollars in cash and in aid have been funneled to Al-Qaeda in Syria. And that's just what they've admitted and found. That funding has now been terminated.
That's just what they've admitted, he says. That was a very important point to make. They've admitted this, US aid, in their own audit. Wonderful, isn't it? And people will continue to pull the wool over their own eyes. And to help them sleep at night, they will say, that's just bad management. It was just an accident. They didn't really mean to give all that money to ISIS. They did. Of course they did. 10 minutes to midday. We're going to finish with this because it's very important. This is in the Sunday Telegraph today. The headline is major UK companies preparing to microchip employees. Major UK companies preparing to microchip employees. British companies are planning to microchip some of their staff in order to boost security and stop them accessing sensitive areas. Biohacks, a Swedish company that provides human chip implants, told The Telegraph that it was in talks with a number of UK legal and financial firms to implement staff with the devices. Implement staff with the devices. What wonderfully benign language. It means between the thumb and the forefinger. Look at your thumb and your forefinger, dear listener. The fleshy part there of your hand. They'll stick a microchip there. It's about the size of a grain of rice. It's very small. Johan Osterlund, who founded Biohacks, Johan Osterlund, said these companies have sensitive documents. They're entitled to microchip people. This dickhead used to be a professional body piercer. This asshole. Now he's making microchips. Companies have every right to protect their patents and protect their sensitive documents and all of that by asking their staff to take a little grain of rice microchip in your hand. It's put in by a syringe and it costs about £150. Marvellous. Johan Osterlund. And he's told The Telegraph today that UK financial companies and other companies are all over this. Let's get a microchip in everybody. And it'll be good. Now, this company and Sweden has been in the news before for this. Sweden must be a basket case country. It's leading the world in the rush to becoming cashless. It's nearly a cashless society now, Sweden. I'm not going to bore you with what you already know about the dangers of a cashless society and the implications of that for your freedom and my freedom. Sweden is at the top of this, and now it's leading the world in let's microchip everybody. So this has been in the news before. It's in the Telegraph today, but it's been in the news before because a BBC reporter went to Sweden to investigate this 2 years ago, and the asshole allowed himself to be microchipped. Listen to this very short but very interesting exchange as he is getting chipped. So they are sticking the chip into his hand. Listen to this little exchange.
We're done. Keep breathing. Just keep breathing normally. Take it easy.
Not quite as bad as I expected.
And that's it. You keep the Band-Aid on until tomorrow morning, and from tomorrow morning you just wash your hands when you're supposed to.
So I'm now chipped.
You're chipped.
This is
You're
going to
good
work.
to go. Yeah, it's going to work.
I'm a cyborg.
Yeah. The first step of being a cyborg, at least.
Yes, you're a fucking cyborg. That's a great thing, isn't it? Wonderful. You're a cyborg now. Or you're on the way to being one anyway. Marvellous. You know, who will have access to the chip? Oh, just the company that put it in your hand. Yeah, right. Right. I'm not going to labour the point here. Even more interesting is this goon here. Listen to this goon. The boss of a company that is introducing microchips for its staff in Sweden. This guy's name is unimportant. Listen to him explaining and extolling the virtues of being chipped.
With this technology, I interact with all kinds of devices all around us. It can be normally my smartphone. I unlock my smartphone, my computer, I unlock my bike. All kinds of things that are now part of the greater connected Internet of Things.
But inside this building, you'll be able to do what else? What other thing will you be able to do?
Oh, I open the front door, I open various office rooms, I open the copy machine so that I can log into it.
So you can print just by putting your hand against the printer?
Exactly. So it's instead of having some clumsy device in my pocket, I just put my hand on the reader. If we help show people that this is really not that complicated, it's making our lives easier, I think people will actually welcome this tool to make their lives easier.
Sadly they will, you see, because I know it always sounds like we bashed the youngsters, God love them. You know, I have a lot of time for people who are younger than me. I don't meet people much younger than me very often, but when I do, and I'm out walking with my dog and we have an interaction, because the dog is a great, you know, introducer of people, I love hearing what they have to say, you know, and listening to them, because they have a different pair of eyes than I do. But sadly, of course, they will adopt this the same way they adopted putting their fingerprints on their phones and using facial recognition software on their phones, which they are doing now. Pippa King, by the way, remarkable woman, has been on the case of this and watching this be rolled out for several years now, for more than several years. Remarkable. Google Pippa King. It's pippaking.blogspot.co.uk. There's loads. Biometrics in schools. Google that. Look for Pippa. She's been working on this for years. Amazing. Amazing. Not a word in the Telegraph story today about those expressing concern about, you know, privacy, at the very least privacy, let alone the medical and health implications of being microchipped. Not a word. Telegraph says it's a good thing. BBC says it's a good thing. Let's all rush off and be microchipped. 'Tis mad. That's it for Sunday View. There was a story on faith schools that I wanted to get into, but I don't have any time. I'll get into it tomorrow on the on tomorrow's show, because it's relevant. Story about spirituality, and I think it's very interesting. I might get a guest to talk to me on that this week. That's pretty much it for the show. Thank you. Thanks to Cliff Moore. Thanks for the kind words, Cliff. Yeah, I enjoyed the programme myself this morning. Nice to have a mixed bag there. Good to hear from you, by the way, Cliff. And David as well, who tweets as cartoon drunk. Hi to Cave Hillbilly as well. How do we know that our weapons ended up in the hands of terrorists? We checked our receipts. That's an old Bill Hicks joke. Brilliant, mate. Thanks for reminding me of that. Very good. Hi to D. Numpty as well. And Natasha tweets, cyber terrorism. Common sense says you would target the banks and the economy for maximum mayhem, but that doesn't happen, says Natasha. That's a very shrewd observation, Natasha. That's it for Sunday View. Gonna love you and leave you then. Back tomorrow, of course, for the week's shows. The first one tomorrow at 5 p.m. Got some good guests lined up this week, so I do. Enjoy your Sunday. The weather has improved since I began the show. Here in South Manchester, I do see blue sky. I see a blue sky and I see regular looking clouds, eh? Regular looking clouds. Marvellous. That makes a nice change. Look after yourselves then, and one another. See you tomorrow, leaving you with the Who. And won't get fooled again, but sadly we will just get fooled all the time. Again and again and again and again and again, eh? Some of us will. See you tomorrow.